There we go.
Here we go. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this panel session. Today we've got 3 presentations to work through, and we're going to start with Dr. Louise Weber from the University of Plymouth, and her presentation. Oh, sorry, are you all right with her, or what's your preferred pronouns? Yeah,
no,
that's fine. Yeah. And Louise's presentation is called "I would probably still be sort of floundering a little bit now if I didn't have the foundation year and the skills it afforded us." So Louise will share findings from a small-scale longitudinal study focused on the experiences of 5 foundation year students in the BA Honours Childhood Studies context. So I'm going to hand over now to Louise to get us started. So there'll be 20 minutes for the presentation and then 10 minutes of questioning at the end. If you do have questions, please put them into the chat. I presume the chat function is there. And when it comes to the 10 minutes at the end, if you just raise your hand. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Louise.
Lovely, thank you very much. Let me just get this one up and ready to go. Lovely, I can assume you can all see it. If not, I think somebody will probably shout at me. Thank you, Fiona. Yes, my name's Dr. Louise Weber. I'm from the University of Plymouth. I'm a lecturer in early childhood studies. I'm also the programme lead there, as well as the programme lead for our foundation year. And it's the foundation year that I particularly want to talk to you about. I have an interest in the student experience. I have done since I did my PhD, particularly looking at mature students or students sort of widening participation, access, that type of student as well. So let me just move you out the way. There you go, now I can see. So there's my abstract, which you already know about. So the aim of my presentation is to discuss my longitudinal project and also a mini study I did during COVID. I want to illuminate the foundation year students' experiences of their 4-year degree and talk about that from their perspective. I want to reveal some initial findings that I've got, including the development of their study skills, their self-belief, their academic confidence, and also their identity change during their 4-year degree. And I'm going to explore factors that have led to the development of these particular skills. So let's start by looking at what is a foundation year, because not everybody may be aware, particularly those that may not be in a UK context. So the foundation year is entry onto a degree for students who fail to meet the entry criteria. It's a 3-year degree plus an extra year. So the foundation year counts as year 0, and then they do the 3 years of their normal degree after that. For our students, they're either on the early childhood studies strand or the education strand. It's for students who don't quite meet the UCAS criteria, and UCAS being our system that we have in the UK, where grades for A levels, etc., and FE qualifications are given points. And the students that don't quite get enough points to go onto our programme can then come on to a foundation year. It's designed also for mature students or for those that have been out of education for a very long time, or students, as I said, that didn't quite get their UCAS points. So where is it placed? It's usually on a university campus, though some colleges with university status are coming on board now, but it's mainly university campuses. And why? Why do students come? Well, they come because they really want that experience of studying at university. They didn't quite, as I said, meet the right criteria to get on there, and they want access to the university course, and they also have access to our resources, being on campus, etc. And students tend to really enjoy being part of that right from the start. So imagine the student who didn't quite get their UCAS point and they're going through clearing and they're really anxious because they know they haven't got enough points for their course, and suddenly admissions tutor like me bobs up and go, but we have got something else. We've got a foundation year programme, and it's for those particular students. Or a mature student who says, you know, I haven't studied for a long time, but I know that I can do it, but I haven't got the UCAS points. What can I do? Then they come to us for this foundation year. So my research study, this is based on a longitudinal study over 4 years, and in fact extended it to 5 because I wanted to go for another year. I wanted to see the experiences of our new cohort. So I'd started this about 5 years ago, and I wanted to know, how well do our students get on? Are we setting up foundation year students to fail, because they didn't quite get the points they needed. They might not have got the experiences that some of our other students have got when they join them in year one. And is that fair? And I wanted to see, actually, with this extra year, does it make a difference? How do they get on? So I devised this project with our foundation year students. I only had a very small group to work with. I realised that there was little research on the effects of foundation year programmes on student outcomes, and I wanted to look at that a little bit more. This also includes a little project I did during COVID with our students as well, just to see how they were getting on. So lots and lots of data there, although only with a small group. I used qualitative methods of mind mapping and also reflective journals and interviews with them. And my aims really were to develop the body of knowledge about their experience and to find out how they got on. So I wanted to investigate their aims and motivations for starting the degree. I also wanted to track their experiences during their whole 4-year degree. If they lose momentum in year 2 or year 3. I wanted to evaluate how well it actually prepared them for student level, for university level study. Did it make a difference? Were we doing things really well for them? Were they on a par with their peers? And I also wanted to use the findings to inform others. So there has been some research published as a result of this, because there are other people like me who are developing these foundation year programs. So I want to introduce you to one of my students. Let me just move that over there. Okay, so Diana is a typical student, and obviously her name's been changed for confidentiality reasons. Diana really had what she called imposter syndrome, and she talked about it all the way through her degree. And having the imposter syndrome that I do, and I worry about everything, I felt like that was maybe going to be something that held me back, was the inability to think I can go further and I can do more. Thankfully, Diana did go further and she did do more, and she kept going. And she came onto the course after working in early years for many years, and many of our students are like that. They left school, they didn't necessarily go on and do further education. Diana was one that started but then dropped out when she was pregnant, and then just kept getting told you can't do this, you can't do that. And that's typical of many of our students. She had the potential for uni level study, but as I said, her personal circumstances changed and everything changed. She is a mature student. She struggled, as Chapman says, with this imposter syndrome, this self-belief. She had a real fragile learner identity initially. And actually that followed her most of the way through her degree programme. Even though she kept getting amazing grades, she still couldn't quite believe it, not till she came to the end. She also had additional stresses of sort of caring responsibilities and other things to sort of juggle and contend with. A lot of our students are like Diana, but we also have those students who went through the A-level system or did a BTEC, whatever, and didn't quite get the grades that they wanted, and they come to us really disappointed. And they come to us fed up with education because they feel they've failed before. Some students had really poor experiences earlier and left at 16 and never wanted to ever go back again. So we have all these different students on our programme, as well as sort of apprentices who didn't quite get enough UCAS points because the apprenticeship system doesn't give them that, who come onto our programme. But Diana is quite typical of many of our mature students. And the thing with Diana is that she did achieve. She did pass her degree. She actually got first. And she was so inspired and inspiring, and she's our biggest advocate for our foundation year. So if you don't believe me and want to see anyone and ask them about what they think of the foundation year, she's one, and you'll see her comments in any of the papers that I've written that you may read. So what are the benefits of a foundation year? And the research that I have done has found these main benefits. It's all about confidence building, and that's one thing we work really hard to do with our students, is to build their confidence up and to tell them you can do it, and it's okay to make mistakes, and we all mess up, and that's fine. Take a risk, have a voice, have a go, and that's the most important thing. And we can really see our students developing confidence even now at this early stage after only being with us a couple of months. So you can see there some of the quotes from some of our students. That's Kate. Not only did her confidence improve, but her friends and her family noticed it as well. Stephanie as well, she found that the foundation year showed her things she didn't even think she was capable of. And also Flo, she felt it really set her up. And that was a big thing the student said in terms of study skills. This degree has set me up. Not only do I feel at the same level as my first year counterparts, actually I feel ahead of them. I know stuff they don't know, and that gives them great confidence. And the other students actually commenting on that as well. And you can see from Tony's comment there that that's something that he's really picked up. So I just want to move on a little bit. And as I started doing this research, and as I started working with our foundation year students, I could see these things were happening. I could see their confidence was building, their personal confidence, as well as their academic confidence. And I just thought, fantastic. And we got through to March, we'd nearly finished with our first cohort, or 2/3 through, and then COVID hit. I thought, oh no, what is going to happen to our students now? How are they going to cope with online learning? So this paper that's only been recently published is about that. I took COVID out of the title because it took so long to get it published. I thought it didn't sound relevant anymore, but it is about COVID. So I use Bourdieu as a thinking tool to help me work out the students' experiences, to help me analyse them a little bit more. So this study explored their experiences during the COVID-19 pandemic. It took most of those 5 students that were in the main study, plus 1 or 2 others as well that wanted to take part. And I wanted to find out, could they cope away from face-to-face contact? How would they cope during COVID with online study? Because foundation year students often are seen as students who perhaps lack study skills, who lack confidence, all the things that I've said already. Will they be okay? So Bourdieu talks about the role of inequality in education. And he talks very much about habitus, field, capital, and I'm sure you're all aware of this, but for those that don't, I'll just go through it really quickly. So the field is a social space in which interactions take place. There are often rules in that space. So in higher education, that's our field, and there are certain rules that students have to do, and often positions in that field. And students, when they come on, have to learn the rules of the game. Now, habitus is that set of dispositions which they come with. It inclines them to act in certain ways. It's obviously ingrained from childhood, etc. And it's almost second nature to how we think and how we respond. And capital is seen as different capitals that determine different positions within that field. So for our students, we're thinking very much about social capital. You know, do they have peers that have come through the situation before that can tell them about university? Do they have family that have been through it before? Do they have community networks, etc., that will help them be successful? Most of our foundation students don't. Most of them are first generation students. Economic capital is another one. Again, for some of our students, they're really struggling with finances, so sometimes they don't have those advantages. They don't always have access to a laptop. Some of the books, etc., they can't get, so they sometimes find that can be a bit of a barrier. And then the cultural capital, they don't necessarily know how university works, so then that can be a real barrier for them. They don't really know the rules of the game for university. So I use those things to sort of analyse what was going on with our students. Now, when we switched from face-to-face learning to online learning in matter of a day, it was quite horrific, as I'm sure most of you can remember if you were within education. It was hard, it was so hard, and it was really hard for our students because the safety net they had of that face-to-face opportunities with us suddenly was gone, and they were suddenly behind a screen at home. Now, the reality of that, there was lots of stresses for many of our students. And it was different. Some of them had to face with illness within the family, changes to employment structure, family structures changed, financial pressures. All of these things made a big difference to them, as well as just sharing the home space with other people. And some of them did home learning with their children. Despite all these stresses, our students did really well, and they seemed to cope really well. They managed to keep going with their assignments. They managed to turn up to their Zoom online lectures, etc., which just made such a difference. Okay, so Hannah said, for example, that she really enjoyed using the Zoom calls. She thought it was great that she could still have personal well, not quite face-to-face learning, but that personal stuff. They liked the breakout rooms, they liked the check-in, etc. So that worked very, very well. Can I just ask everyone just to put their audio on mute for me? Some of you aren't, and there's a bit of feedback there. So if you could check you're on mute, that would be fantastic. Thank you. So just moving on.
Can I have a festival wrap And the
Perfect.
Right.
Okay.
Should be all right now.
Thank you very much. Lovely. So if I can just go back one, it completely threw me there. Okay, so there were different factors that contributed to them coping during lockdown. They'd already developed this readiness for learning because they'd developed study skills. This really helped them when it came to online learning. They already had a sense of being a university student. This also helped them. And there's a spelling mistake there that I haven't seen before, and this has just gone to publication as well. Whoops, oh dear. Okay, so the importance of relationship was really important with their lecturer, and that sustained them through COVID. Having these peer relationships and also feeling part of this academic community. What was really significant was that Tony had said that he felt that he missed the campus so much that during COVID he was going to charge up his laptop and go and sit on a bench and work there because he missed that community. So there were things that really supported them during COVID, and it was that initial way of being on the foundation year and the things that we put in place. So drawing on Bourdieu a little bit here, you can see that they developed social capital, and they also developed this cultural capital in those first few months before COVID hit. So social capital, they developed this networking together, they developed really strong relationships, and this is something we really encouraged. They supported each other through very challenging times. They also developed this cultural capital. They understood about university systems, referencing academic support, IT skills, how HE worked, all of that we kept working really hard with them. And all of that then helped them develop this HE habitus. And this HE habitus is very much this development of HE academic identity, self-belief, self-achievement, etc., as well as this self-confidence and self-awareness.
You've under 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. So what lessons have we learned from this? We've learned to create this team teaching pedagogy for our foundation year students, the way that we all make sure our students feel valued, they are able to reposition their previous habitus, etc., and create new ways of being. That's really, really important. We do this by developing their academic confidence through this comprehensive program of study skills to develop this educational capital, which then gives them this self-motivation and also academic confidence and academic resilience. We facilitate small group opportunities for them because we realise that having this peer relationships is really important. It sustains them through difficult times, such as during COVID, by having these relationships already. But we also give them problem-solving activities. We offer a range of opportunities to foster a sense of community amongst staff, but also amongst students. And again, this really, really helps our students. And we then connect them with the campus and the university. We make a big thing of your university students. Let's use the facilities on offer. And that gives them a sense of belonging and place. And as I said, during COVID, for students like Tony, when they were away from the campus, they missed that sense of security, which was really, really important to them. So just drawing this to a little bit of a close here, you can see from the research I've presented, in my opinion, even though this is a very small scale study, and I can't generalize, all over, but from the students that we've worked with, these seems to be the things that work really well for them in order to be successful as a foundation year student. So just to draw your attention to a couple of things as we close. So there's the reference list there, but at the bottom, there are 2 articles. The first one here, that one is under review, so please look out for that one if you're interested in following any of this up. And the other one is already out. So that one is about using capital, habitus and fields. It gives you lots more examples and lots of the students' voices, which I haven't really captured well enough in this particular presentation. But thank you very much for listening, and I hope you have some questions or thoughts on any of the things that I've already presented. Thank you. I hope that was within time.
Oh yeah, you're within time. Thank you very much for that, Louise. I'm going to, as I say, open it up now to 10 minutes of questions. And we've already got one in the chat. So it's from Hilary Collins. and it asks, do you think your students, who as I understand are more mature, developed more resilience and therefore were more adaptable to online learning?
It's a really good question. We probably had, in that cohort, we probably had half and half. So we had half were mature students and half weren't. And in the paper, I think again in the paper I've probably got half and half. So some of the students that I've mentioned there were mature ones, yep. But also some of our other students were the same. So they mentioned different stresses. So some of them were studying at home against parents who were trying to compete for kitchen space, for table space, all of those things. In terms of were they more resilient and adaptable, I think all of our students showed that. There is a certain amount of resilience and adaptability with our mature students. I can't hide from that. And there's more, they've got more to lose. So then they tend to adapt, get on with stuff as well. But they also come quite fragile, as do our other students. And I think they all, it's difficult to answer them. They all had the same level of support, and we put the same structures in place for all of our students, because although there are different things for different age students, essentially a lot of them do come with a lack of confidence and all of those things that I mentioned before. So we do tend to work on that with them. I think it was harder for our mature students, if I'm honest, because they had more things to juggle. But yeah, they all cope quite well. Sorry, Hilly, I'm not even sure that I answered that very well.
No, thanks, Louise, you did. It just brought it home to me because, Louise, you were in our presentation previously, and we were discussing academic identity. But I've moved on a little bit now to the student experience, and I'm working with some students who seem to be reflecting on a poor experience with distance learning. And I suppose really I'm just wondering, is it the type of students, or is it perhaps that your university managed to adapt the pedagogy, which doesn't appear to have happened in the university that I'm now working with?
I think what was favourable to us is we have small groups of students. So in that cohort, we didn't have a very big group at all. And even in future years, we've got bigger cohorts, but they're still relatively small. They're sort of under 25.
Okay.
And we also have a small team that get to know the students really, really well. And that's part of our pedagogy, is to know our students really well. So then we can notice how they're doing, and we can then give a lot of support. So that made a difference. But also, as early childhood specialists, we're quite playful. So we did a lot of interactive online activities. We did a lot of group work, breakout rooms, all of those things. We tried to replicate what happened in the classroom online as well for our students. It was hard work for the lecturers, but we tried to make sure it was as seamless as possible for them.
Well, thanks, Louise. I'll take a look at that paper actually and sort of draw some comparisons. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got a few questions there. I'm just conscious of time, so any questions that don't get answered, maybe Louise, you could answer them in the text chat after it. So I'm going to go to a question from Fiona. What was your experience of your foundation degree students during the 2021 period? How did you adapt your learning from earlier cohorts to support that group?
Well, we were thrown in at the deep end. So our first cohort of students was during the COVID pandemic. So they started in September, and we had until February, March. Well, March, wasn't it? So we had until then with them. So we had a really good block of time. So we had no comparisons. We were completely, I won't say winging it, because I don't think that's right, but we were learning as we were going along, which again, why the study was really essential, to see actually would they cope. And I was terrified that they wouldn't.
But that next cohort, the September 2020 cohort, I suppose that's the cohort where it became all online. I just wonder how you were able to draw from your experiences that you've talked to us about to make their experience kind of acceptable. But I think in part you just responded to it, to the previous question, actually, I think.
Yes, and also we went as quickly as we could with our university of going some face-to-face as much as we could, or we did hybrid. So we learned from that, but we used those main things again: small groups, group work, activity, social skills, build up relationships amongst themselves and with us.
Thank you, Fiona and Louise. I'll go back to a question that Shannon, I think it's a question The conclusions seem relevant to all first year, not just foundation year courses. Would you agree, disagree with that, or have you anything to add to that?
No, I think it's particularly important for widening participation and access students because of the fragile identity that they come with. However, the philosophy of getting to know our students, small group work, etc., getting them to work with each other, build a community, is what we also do with our first years, but we do it even more so with the foundation year. I give them more opportunities to work together, to speak up, to develop that confidence. I talk to them more about, it's okay if we make mistakes. We still do that with the first years, but I make a real effort with our foundation year students to make a bigger thing of it, I think, because I can see that's what they really need at that point. But yes, you're right, they are helpful for all year groups.
Thank you both. And we've got another question there from Emanuela. With regards to your recruitment and admissions of students in your foundation year, can you describe what your minimum requirements are for student success to get a place?
Yeah. Whenever you get put on the spot, that your figures go out of your head, don't they? I think it's 32 to 48 UCAS points, which is really slight. A lot of our students don't have that. Some don't have it because they didn't have qualifications. So then we set them an interview and also an interview task to assess them. Occasionally there are borderline students, and again we set them the same things, and then we just have a chat to them and see whether we think they're going to do quite well. And most of the time they just want a break, they just want an opportunity. And then those that were really borderline know that this is their sort of last chance in some ways. But yeah, normally 32 to 48, I believe. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? I've got a quick one for you. Yeah. You talk about the students gaining confidence as they progress through the course, and if we can frame that as educational success. I'm thinking of somebody like Nicola Ingram that talks about the effective impact of being educationally successful in students that come in maybe not feeling that they belong, and then as they move through it they might feel that actually I don't belong here or I don't belong there. Did you notice anything like that, and how did you address that?
I think occasionally you do have students that don't. So you're talking about in terms of don't belong, you mean suddenly they're at university and they no longer fit in with those at home?
Exactly. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So it's that liminality, I guess, that can occur when people make those transitions from one cultural space into another.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it does make a huge difference for some students. Sometimes it's a period of adjustment. So again, that tutor support and talking things through is really, really useful. For some students, there's usually someone in their corner somewhere. Sometimes they have opposition from family because they're doing something completely different to what they'd expect. And I often say, who's in your corner? And usually it's a friend or someone, or they get someone on the course that's in their corner. And usually by the end, the family have come round. Graduation is a very important time for them on the whole, but not always. But yes, some of them do find they're floating between those spaces. Tony, for instance, found that at the football games, rugby games, he wasn't standing with the people he used to. He's suddenly edging towards the head teachers and all those people because he's got things he wants to talk to them about. So he did find that was tricky. Yeah, some do.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing. I also think something that we had more time to discuss it is the idea of a fragile identity, like WP students coming through with that, and potentially what universities and schools can be doing and other institutions that people transition through can be doing to address that. That was fantastic. Thank you very much, Louise. If we could all show our appreciation, thank you. And that brings us on nicely to the second presentation. Just get my clock set up. So we're going to move on now to a presentation by Dr. Mariam Makramala from New Giza University in Egypt, Professor Shannon Chance from Technological University in Dublin, and Professor Emanuela Tilley from University College London. And their presentation is called Transferring a Mathematical Problem-Solving Experience Across Contextual Borders, a case study of an international educational transfer collaboration between Egypt and the UK. And this work is an ongoing collaboration between the three of them, exploring the extent to which challenge-based curriculum design created by UCL consultants can support undergraduate engineers develop problem-solving skills as they transition into the labour market. I hope I've got that right. So again, we've got 20 minutes and then 10 minutes for questions at the end. So I'm going to hand over to our presenters and I'm starting the clock.
Yes, thank you very much, Charlie, for this introduction. I've had a little bit of internet problems, so I'll close my camera just in case it increases the bandwidth. So can you see my screen? Perfect. Okay. So just like Charlie mentioned, I'm happy to be presenting with Emanuela and Shannon. I've been working with Emanuela and Shannon for the past 3 years now. On this project, we are going to tell you a little bit more about the project details and different steps that we have adopted so far. The title we've chosen for our presentation is Transferring a Mathematical Problem-Solving Experience Across Contextual Borders. And this is a case study about international educational transfer experiences. In particular, it's a collaboration between an Egyptian context and a United Kingdom based context. So what do we mean exactly by
Mariam.
that?
Can I break for just a second? Is everybody else seeing the slides? Because I'm only seeing a text that says you started sharing.
Yeah,
really?
I think the slides, because of your connection, are not coming through.
Oh, they're not coming through? Okay, let me try to share then.
Stop sharing and try again. It sometimes fixes itself on the second try.
I'll try to see if I can sit somewhere. The network is, I try to sit in the other room and in this room. I'll see if I can sit
I have
in
the
another
slides
room
as well. So, or Emanuela, do you want to share? Good, go ahead.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
If someone else can share, and then, that might work better. There we go. We can see it.
Great, thanks.
I can't see
Emanuela,
them,
can
so
you
I
go
think
to
I'll
the first
try
slide?
to move.
Yeah, thanks.
I still can't see them, so I think if Emanuela, if you can see them, can you go through the first slides?
No, if you go through the slides, even if you can't see them, we can do it in sync. So you can start and you do the first couple slides, and then when you're done, that's okay. I can move them along as you talk. It's okay.
Okay, I'll look through the slides and see them on the screen. So basically, it's a transfer experience. It's a case study between Egypt and the UK, and it has been going on for 3 years so far. And so, Emanuela, if you can go to the next slide, please. Yes, so this is a collaboration between the three of us. Yeah, here we go. Now I can see the slides. So my name is Mariam. I act as the academic liaison on the New Giza side. The collaboration is between University College London and New Giza University. And I've been leading on kind of the curricular transfer experience and the process for the last 3 years. Emanuela is Director of Studies at the UCL Center for Engineering Education, and she has been co-leading the academic collaboration on the UCL side, focusing on the architectural engineering program. And Shannon has been developing a very big chunk of the curricula that we're adopting. And together we have been finding different ways of how does a curriculum transfer itself across borders as easily as you can transfer materials, or is the process a little bit more complicated? So these are some of the questions that we have been looking at. Maybe if we can go to the next slide.
Yep.
Emanuela, do you want to take it from there?
Sure. So just a little bit of context and background. We were approached by Miriam's University, NGU, to take the framework that we have that has completely transformed our engineering programs at UCL, which we call the Integrated Engineering Program. And we've put a teaching framework in place whereby there is quite a lot more practice-based learning or active learning, lots of project-based learning. And we do this in vertically connected modules, so modules that are connected in the first year, second year, and the third year, as well as horizontal module operations. So there's some connections across years. So really trying to integrate skill sets, as well as making more explicit that connection between theory and practice. And here Miriam's going to talk about how that is happening in the mathematics for engineers. And so we've done this, and this collaboration has happened before COVID. So we went through COVID together to do this, where everything was in person, and we had created the curriculum, you know, unique to NGU. And the program we're talking about here is the architectural engineering program. And then we had to go online. So we do quite a lot of challenge-based or scenario-based learning, and that will come into how Miriam talks about some of the differences between how, you know, perhaps our culture here and the culture within Egypt with integrating such active-based pedagogy. So in terms of quality assurances, we have together created a program specification, which aligns very much with the integrated engineering program here at UCL. And so larger individual courses are designed to be pillars of this framework. So project-based learning modules, business and entrepreneurship-based modules, culture, arts, history modules are also big pillars, as well as big practice and skills-based modules are big pillars. And so we work together to contextualize the curriculum to make sure that there are alignments, so that there's an international aspect as well as very much that cultural aspect that is within Egypt as well, having both of those underpinning the contextualization of the curriculum. And we also have, for quality assurances, visits for to understand how the curriculum is actually being delivered and the quality of that. So yeah, that's a little bit of background. And this is just a graph that shows about the placement, particularly the purple modules. Those are our project-based modules, some of them being full semester or terms, whole modules, and others being short, intensive, 1 week activities that are considered more like assessments within modules, but that they span whole, I suppose, intensive time periods of 1 week, where they just do the scenario projects. And those are the 5 listed there. And then, as I mentioned before, each color represents, I suppose, the pillars that we've included within the program spec for the architectural engineering course. So there's those technical modules that are certainly discipline specific, the mathematical modules, that's a vertical pillar, arts, history, culture, and society, as well as professional skills, and then the business management. So that's a core aspect of the program that we're delivering together, delivering together. I'm just going to bring Shannon now in to talk more about how these projects have really kind of brought to life the program.
Thanks, Emanuela. When we looked at the previous diagram, we saw that there were those technical modules, and I think that's where the architecture design studios would fall. We also had that line of mathematics modules. And then separate from that, we have the challenges and scenarios. So we're actually, through the challenges and scenarios, we are drawing from all these other courses. We're trying to get the students to draw from these and to apply their learning in practice. Now, you're probably familiar with architectural education enough to know that in those technical modules, for us, many of those are already problem-based, thoroughly problem or project-based. But here we're integrating some things from the IEP, the integrated engineering program at UCL and doing some innovative things that aren't usually done in architecture programs. So let's look at what the challenges and scenarios look like. On the next slide, we do have pictures of the challenges, the first challenge that students get. Now, the challenges are multidisciplinary experiences. So the students in these slides would be students from all the engineering programs. Currently, we have 2 engineering programs. That's a communications, electrical engineering type program, as well as the architecture ones. So students on all of the engineering programs that NGU offers now, or eventually will offer, will work together on those challenges. And in this case, they are very much applying mathematics, because this particular assignment that has been refined at UCL uses a lot of mathematics. So we call this pebble in the pond. And the students are working in teams right as soon as they enter the university. And they are applying mathematics to figure out how to get this pebble to travel, across a room into a pond. So there's a really practical side of testing things out, trial and error, but there's also some mathematical calculation involved. Beyond the challenges, we also have scenarios that were on that diagram, which is where all classes are suspended for engineering students. So they're not doing any of those other threads. They stop for a week and they focus on a specific project. Those are within the specific discipline. So sometimes they're working together with other students, say on designing a facade for a building that uses electrical and electronics sensing and things like that to be able to move and respond to the environment. And other times they're working just with their colleagues in their own system. But in this, we're trying to make it much more fun and interactive and integrated. I need to pass it along though, because I could talk about this all day.
Thank you, Shannon. So this leads us to having looked at this and worked together on this project for 3 years. I've been trying to unpack different opportunities, but also different challenges that can help us inform policymaking in higher education. Questions of cross-boundary curricular transfer in higher ed are becoming very relevant in today's world. And I think our experience of working together can help shape a lot of the policymaking questions that are relevant today. So the 2 big titles that I've chosen are the curricular transfer across contextual boundaries. When you transfer a curriculum across a physical boundary, there is another unseen boundary, which is the context. And you're transferring the curricular idea across that context. And with this context, there comes a lot of social baggage, a lot of cultural baggage, a lot of often political baggage that you really need to take into consideration when you're transferring curriculum experience. And there's a lot of literature that talks about cross-context transfer. One of the very popular one is the work of Paul Ernest. Paul Ernest spoke a lot about curricular transfer and particularly the role of context in transferring a curriculum. The second thing I wanted to focus on was also the transfer of the enactment experience. You envision the curriculum to operate in a certain way as a curriculum writer, but then there is very little control on how much gets enacted in the way you've envisioned it. And I think we really need to ask ourselves these difficult questions. How can we transfer a curricular enactment? It's very easy to it's not very easy, but it's easier to transfer a curriculum in writing. It's more difficult to transfer the vision behind it and the curricular enactment. So I was struggling with these thoughts. So I decided to develop a small longitudinal study to do that. So what are the methods that I've adopted? Emanuela, can you go to the next slide? Yeah. So I decided to start journaling this experience because I was firsthand the direct lead of the collaboration. I started a journaling blog 3 years ago, and I started doing the journaling on a number of layers. So as this journaling developed, I started looking at different pedagogical beliefs. What are pedagogical beliefs that are assumed, inherent in the curricular experience, and how much of these pedagogical beliefs can we think are agreed upon by all parties, and how much of them are cultural or are linked to the background of the person who teaches a given course, and how much can we deduce from a curricular transfer experience about the pedagogical beliefs expected or kind of that act as a starting point to ensure that the enactment of a curriculum will happen in the same way. So that's kind of one layer that I was looking at, but then there was another kind of block of journaling that was focusing on variations across ethos. So when I design a curriculum, it's based on a certain ethos, it's based on a certain philosophy, and behind my design of a given course is a philosophy that I might not be able to bring across as easy as I bring across a syllabus, for instance. And so what's the ethos that is behind this? What is the philosophy that is behind this? And can I transfer this philosophy? Can I have a policy that ensures the transfer of this philosophy in the same way as it was intended by the curriculum designer? I'm looking at Shannon and she's smiling because I think these are some of the discussions we've been having over the past years. Also, one of the things more on a more policy, oh, sorry, do we have, sorry, Charlie, coming out?
Just under 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, one of the things when you're looking at policy making in higher ed and curricular transfer experiences, you really need to ask yourself about the expectations of each party from this academic collaboration. The word academic collaboration, it resonates in each stakeholder's mind in a different way. Personally, I'm very keen on having exchange of research, exchange of academic experiences, and that this experience of exchanging curricula would inform us as policymakers, but also as researchers. Different parties would see things in different ways, and I think we can't assume that the expectations are the same of all stakeholders. So I think we need to have policies that make this very clear from the beginning. Also, there are historical rootings to pedagogical approaches. So the quote, I quote, "We've always done it this way. Why should we now do it differently?" So some of the ways we've been doing things will not change because they have a history with us, with our personal history, and very often with the personal history of the culture or the nation you're transferring to. And I think we need to start questioning ourselves whether there are documents that can inform people who are engaged in cross cultural curricular transfer experiences. I've talked a lot about contextual relevance, so I don't want to take much time about that. But I think that all of these findings lend itself as a ground for a larger discussion about deep-rooted questions of policymaking in cross-cultural curricular exchange settings. These are serious questions that we need to unpack. So why is this important? So obviously it's important to us because it affects our collaboration, but I think more broadly, it is important to the larger audience of higher ed education because the global classroom reality is an undeniable reality. And I don't think we are ready for this. Today, I can tap into a classroom happening in Japan at the tip of my finger. And this means that I would be accessing a different culture. I would be accessing a different pedagogical experience. I would be accessing a different philosophy altogether. And am I ready for that? And I think the rapid growth of international exchange because of political situations and distanced learners and displaced learners and COVID and a lot of other reasons have created these bridges, these international bridges of curricular transfer. And I think the bridges have been created in a much faster sense than the policies have. And that's why in the next, was it the next or this one? Yeah, in this slide, we are inviting everybody who's interested to come together and we develop a policy framework for cross-boundary exchange. We need to think of the full complexity and think together of questions of how we can have policies that support this very complex cross-border transfer operation. So thank you for your time. And yeah, we look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mariam, Shannon, and Emanuela. Thank you. So we're on time, which is great. And what we're going to do now is we're just going to open it up to some questions for 10 minutes. And I believe there is a question in the chat. So it's from Fiona. And it's asking, how have you solicited student feedback and what is the essence of students' reflections on their experiences?
Yes, that's an excellent question. So I think there are two parts to this question. There's student feedback in the formal sense and how it feeds the quality review process of the whole operation, and then there's the question of student reflections. So I'll start with the latter. We are working on another study where we are asking students to students are going through a kind of a smaller extra designed mathematical module. And as we're speaking, we're still developing this work, but the intention is that students would be keeping reflective logs throughout their experience, and we would be analyzing these in a formal manner. So far, I've been keeping reflective logs and very detailed ones because I found it interesting as a researcher. But we have in the last conference in Dublin, in the in European Engineering Education Society, we've started presenting a project where we will be logging student journal reflections. Student official feedback is part of the quality assurance process. Maybe Emanuela, do you want to talk more about that?
Oh, so we've had the opportunity to kind of be the outsider coming in and speaking to students, and saying that in general, this is an offering that is really attractive because it sets them apart. They do see this as a different way of learning. Many students actually, when we spoke to them in their second year, were saying that they made the decision to come here instead of going abroad. So that attractiveness to perhaps even a non-traditional Egyptian education was something that said, well, perhaps I could get it here. You know, the contextualization of it, you know, the Egyptian elements of the curriculum, but then also that perhaps a Western approach and the marriage of that. So that was really interesting. And I think to many students, because UCL was there beside them, wanting to do, and they knew the students were new to this, that they were the first cohorts. They were ready for that experiment and trying to understand what that marriage could be and how things could change in Egypt. But in many ways, a lot of their feedback is the same as students in here in the UK about you know, questions about the assessment and the student experience, and perhaps what we could do to help develop a better sense of community between the staff and the students, because it is so active and the students' voice is so loud. I think they really wanted to get the most out of the staff because they were also central to their learning. So I think they were, you know, just trying to really kind of capitalize on the amount of time that they have with the staff, because that was so new to them. And that relationship is not something that they were ever really kind of had, and perhaps that doesn't exist as much in the earlier years in traditional Egyptian context. So I would say those are the big standouts when we met with them last year, or earlier this year, actually. It was in May. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to the question from Lee that's in the chat, because it links to what you've been discussing, and hopefully we'll be able to come back to Tamer's question. But Lee is asked, with respect to both student feedback and the socio-politics of curriculum transfer, how much do you think it matters that the partnership is with NGU, a very new and private, as well as relatively costly university, versus, say, one of the more older, more state-regulated universities in Egypt?
I think I can take this one. So there are multiple parts in the question. So a question about the university level, socio-culturally or socio-economically. There's also the question about the heavy regulated bureaucratic older universities in Egypt. So most of the professors that work at NGU would also be holding a tenureship at an Egyptian university. So in terms of the human interaction of the cross-curricular transfer experience from a pure social point of view, I think it would have been the same, because it's the same professors that you would be dealing with at Cairo University that you are having here. I think the main difference is with the student body and the student expectations. in a university such as NGU, most students come from an international school background, and this is why we find that they are already very ready to embrace ideas like, you know, critical thinking and analysis, and they are very westernized in their even way of dressing, way of talking, all of that. And this puts a pressure on faculty because most faculty come from this very traditional background. So I think it creates this triangulation of complexity, because you're kind of having Cairo University in-house by recruiting people who are mostly working in Cairo University, but then you don't have the Cairo University student body. You have a very complex student body that come from, you know, very high expectation backgrounds, and because it's a private university, they're paying money, as you said, so they have high expectations in terms of the complexity of the analysis that is to be expected. And then you have the underlying complexity that you're transferring a Western system to kind of a Middle Eastern system. So it's a very complex question, and it links to a lot of the gaps that we have been addressing in the past years. And I think you've hit the nail on the head by saying that, you know, there are a number of complexities there, and that's one of the things that I personally would love to kind of unfold and look at in more detail if people are interested. I also leave my email address if people are interested to follow up on that.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go back up to the question by Tamer. I hope I've pronounced your name correctly. And Tamer asks, could you please provide some examples of how you managed the challenges you faced, Mariam, in implementation, and also recommendations for future curriculum transfer projects?
Yeah, I'd love to take this. I want to give Shannon a chance to talk because she hasn't talked to her. Shannon, do you want to take this one?
Well, I'd say it's a challenge we deal with every day. We've just been sending emails around. We have a relatively new dean. So, you know, you get that impression that this is very person dependent. And so now we have a new dean in place who is delivering some of the courses. So it's constantly conversation back and forth with the people who are teaching to ask us, well, how did you intend this? And these parts don't fit so well in our culture. Is it okay if we modify these, or what are the implications of us changing this? I would say because of COVID, we had less face-to-face opportunity than we should have had, than we meant to have. But, you know, we made the best of it anyway. And, you know, so by doing the research, it helps us go back and revisit some of the ideas and figure out what's working well and where there are opportunities that we could refine more. I don't know if that answers the question fully.
I think you've highlighted it, though. I think the staff are a major area of time and effort, whether it's the new dean or the lecturer they've hired relatively at the tail end of this developmental project. Every module is developed by us, and then, you know, clearly in collaboration with the key project leads, directors, but particularly when staff are being hired, because they're a new university, they're kind of being hired as later down in the timeline. And so getting them up to speed, not just what to teach, but how it fits within the whole program, and then really kind of pulling them out of their comfort zone in many ways is often the biggest challenge. So I think Mariam would agree that the staff is an area of focus when it comes to being a key part of making this transition work.
But there really is a big cultural blending there. Obviously, you can hear that I'm from the States. Emmanuel is originally from Canada, but you know, we're bringing terminology from different cultural groups, and you know, trying to negotiate what those mean, and prepare students so that they can make a real difference locally within Egypt, within the outskirts of Cairo, and also they're able to go work in international contexts very effectively. So it's a big ask, and we try to do it with sensitivity, but there is a bit of
Yeah, no, I agree. The more we engage with faculty say, across borders, the more we can narrow the gap between the whatever is enacted and whatever is envisioned. So, yeah, I agree.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. And there's another question in the chat. Possibly, if one of you could respond to it, that would be brilliant. It's from Louise. But that brings us to the end of your questions and your presentation. So if you could just
I'll
show
message Louise. Perfect. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Thank you. If we could just show our appreciation for Mariam, Shannon, and Emanuela. Thank you very much. And now we're going to move on to our final presentation by Professor Fiona Cowney from Bournemouth University. And Fiona's presentation, as you can see there, is called Purposeful and Intentional Greenwashing in Higher Education. And Fiona's going to talk to us about her work on a pilot project looking at a UK HEI's sustainability and marketing department to illustrate how a lack of sustainability literacy and collaborative orientation is leading to unintentional greenwashing. So I'm going to hand over to Fiona. Again, 20 minutes for the presentation and then 10 minutes at the end for questions. So over to you, Fiona. Oh, are you there?
I do apologise, rookie error. Yeah, Charlie, thank you so much. And I do understand that this presentation is probably one that doesn't necessarily fit to your kind of interest, because we are such a kind of hodgepodge group in this this particular strand. But I hope it's interesting to some of you. Yeah, my name's Fiona Cowney. I've worked at Bournemouth University for some years and have become increasingly interested in sustainability. Have got myself involved in the sustainability kind of committee at the university, kind of deputy chairing it, and I'm very much kind of attentive to what we at Bournemouth University and indeed across the sector are doing to role model approaches to practicing in a way that is sustainable and in particular in line with the United Nations SDGs. So about 3 years ago, I was walking through our main building. We had an open day, I think, being set up, and there was a plethora of balloons there to attract new students and plenty of things going on that made me feel, gosh, are we actually practicing in the way that we should be in terms of sustainability? And I kind of set this out. Basically, I wrote a piece for Wonky about greenwashing, and having done that, I thought it would be useful to embark upon a kind of pilot study, which could perhaps be the starting point of looking at possible greenwashing within the HE sector. So in essence, we know across the sector that universities are making commitments to reducing their carbon emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, having net zero targets and adopting sustainable practices with increasing vigour. And I suppose my concern is that some of that good work might be jeopardised if there is a sense of those institutions actually greenwashing, that what they say about their sustainability practices is not necessarily to be trusted. So this study that I'm just going to talk to you about is really to start understanding about how we might avoid greenwashing. And I'm coming into the study thinking that greenwashing could be purposeful or unintentional. So I'd just like to take you through some early data at the pilot stage of this project, which I'm hoping to extend out to a broader range of institutions. So I don't know whether you've heard of greenwashing. Greenwashing essentially is seen to be a multifaceted phenomenon which encompasses both environmental, which obviously the green word would kind of imply, but also social issues. And it's that sense of falsehood, that sense of the discrepancy between what we say we're doing and what we actually do. So I love that Pizzetti et al. Idea of the discrepancy between responsible words and irresponsible walks. And if you look at the literature, particularly kind of marketing literature, you see that greenwashing might generate some negative consequences. It might reduce trust, reputation, and increase online negative word of mouth, none of which we would, I guess, want to see in our sector. So I guess I'm coming to this thinking that there may be either a purposeful or an unintentional disconnect between the things we do and how we communicate them in HE. And I come to this thinking that if we are purposefully greenwashing, that would be seen as opportunistic behaviour, which we can define as a deceitful pursuit of self-interest or a violation of promises. So again, just to kind of set the context before we look at what we found out, purposeful greenwashing I'm seeing as communication strategies and artifacts which knowingly seek to misrepresent what we're doing. That would certainly involve selective, manipulative disclosure of positive information and probably neglect of communication of less positive information. So as an example, an institution might take some effort to highlight its move to electric vehicles, solar PV panels, but perhaps neglect to mention investments in fossil fuels. So that's purposeful. It's kind of intentionally focusing on some things and not mentioning other things, which you could argue really are part of the same conversation. Unintentional greenwashing I see as practices which don't live up to the agreed claims of the organisation. So it may be that the organisation declares that it's kind of working in a certain way, but actually when you dig deeper, you can see that practices don't really shape up. And that may be because they're uninformed, perhaps they're imprecise or even lazy in terms of the way people are actually practicing. And it equally could be that communication unknowingly doesn't represent practice. It may place inappropriate emphases on certain aspects of what universities do. So an example here might be, for example, stories about sustainability related live briefs that the institution kind of focuses on, departments promote, but they imply that really there is much more scale there than is reality. So perhaps just a few students, perhaps 4 or 5 students get that opportunity, and yet the implication is that everyone is getting these opportunities. So my focus for this piece of research was to examine the nature, drivers and implications of greenwashing behaviours in higher education. I was particularly interested in student-focused activity that originated from both our marketing and sustainability functions. And I'm talking to you about the early stage of a pilot study. And I'm very much interested in your feedback. So it's one HEI. My research population comprised members of the marketing team and the sustainability team at that HEI. And what I was looking to do through my sample was to talk to leaders in each area, so sustainability, corporate communications, recruitment, international, but also members of staff at a lower level. So I was getting different perspectives. And I also spoke to a kind of expert academic. All the interviews were conducted online through Zoom. They were semi-structured. And I started the interviews basically asking participants about their experiences of working in the area of sustainability, how they develop messaging around sustainability, the challenges they experienced. And I didn't mention greenwashing until the end of the interview, where I was interested in people's reflections, but we weren't kind of starting by talking about greenwashing. Participants, you can see about 10 people. I think there are 10. Essentially, it was difficult to get interviews that extended beyond an hour. People were happy to give me an hour. One member of staff kind of re-engaged with the second part of the interview. But whilst the interviews were around 50 minutes, there was a sense of real rich data in those conversations. So I felt really pleased with the data that we generated. So just to take you through, first of all, kind of the data analysis and some of the things that people were talking about, and then to present you with a kind of an early conceptual framework, and then think about implications for practice. So I just want to take you through sustainability, drivers of potential greenwashing, the characteristics of the marketing of sustainability, and how messaging and activity kind of shape up alongside each other. So to start, first of all, thinking about sustainability. So, of course, I was talking to two different groups. One group who were employed to progress sustainability, and another group, the marketing team, for whom sustainability was one of many things that they were thinking about, and perhaps a thing that they felt was of a lower priority than other aspects of their role, like recruiting more students. So in particular, talking to the marketing team, there was a real low salience of sustainability. It just wasn't high on people's agenda. It had low visibility. COVID had absolutely got in the way. There was a sense of moves in the right direction that kind of COVID had, on the one hand, kind of really disrupted the importance of sustainability, and on the other hand, of course, had promoted more sustainable practices in the way that marketing was conducted. The marketing team found sustainability quite a challenging idea. They were confused by sustainability, what sustainability meant, how things like the United Nations SDGs might map onto the university's various strategies. So there was a sense that this was challenging, confusing, and not at the top of the marketing team's agenda. In terms of literacy and knowledge, this kind of really reflects some of the things I'm talking about. There was undoubted interest about sustainability from every single person that I spoke about. There was a kind of an enthusiasm to engage with sustainability, particularly personally, but there was a real lack of literacy, which kind of reflects what I've just said. And this, of course, was absolutely distinct between the sustainability team, who, of course, were highly literate in sustainability, and the marketing team, who were not. So the marketing team, for example, like all of us at the institution, have access to training on sustainability, such as carbon literacy. But they just hadn't availed themselves of that training. I guess that reflects the sense that they didn't see sustainability as a priority. When I talked to the sustainability team, their sense was that the marketing team, it just didn't seem to click for them. Sustainability just didn't seem to be something they understood. Certainly when we were talking about sustainability, the environment was the focus. There was little sense of sustainability in terms of more social aspects of sustainability. However, there were just pockets of real spirals of knowledge. So one of the guys who's interested in IT, he'd attended one of the a conference, a conference which was about carbon, and he had developed this real interest in knowledge, which he was kind of personally committed to finding out more about how the carbon output of the way we were using our kind of web-based content was being used. And then the second key point was the fact that the ways in which these two teams were working was patchy. There was a patchy relationship. There was certainly an opportunity for more collaboration. The two parties seemed to understand how they
brought different things to the party, so to speak. The sustainability team brought knowledge, and the marketing team brought this kind of sense of being able to create meaning and flair. But there was a real, my sense, these were two camps. They weren't collaborating as well as they could be. The sustainability team felt when things moved into marketing, they lost control. And there was a sense from both parties that there was an opportunity to develop a kind of sustainability communication expert. And that is one of the things that I feel this research kind of arguably does highlight. Just to kind of wrap, very, very briefly, there was a sense of talking to people about how they marketed sustainability. It was a really kind of good news picture, in that there was a really motion to the marketing team's approach to marketing sustainability. I'm just going to highlight this really. There was talk of being brave, having courage, really caring, feeling guilty, and being enthusiastic. So that was a sense that actually, when they did get onto marketing sustainability, there was something really quite positive there. It was just about getting sustainability to the top of the marketing team's agenda that struck me as the key problem. Messaging and activity, of course, greenwashing is about this mismatch between what you do and what you say. And of course, one of the key things that you may even be aware of, if you're not that interested in sustainability, is that recycling is the kind of gateway to sustainability. That's where marketing teams like to focus, because of course it is salient, and everyone can kind of connect with it. But of course, recycling isn't an area that actually makes much impact on, for example, the carbon output of an institution. There was lots of talk about prospectuses, international travel, sustainable procurement, and carbon emissions of digital content. So really the point being, sustainability did seem to have some resonance across a whole range of activities. In terms of messaging, there was a real contrast between the marketing team's preference to talk about hope, positive stories, and to, of course, simplify stories. And this was seen to be really quite a contrast with the way the sustainability team felt. So really, there was a sense that was little evidence of purposeful, opportunistic greenwashing, but there was a sense that there was unintended greenwashing on there going on. A focus on light, happy stories on activity that really had little impact. And knowingly, there was an inappropriate emphasis on things that really didn't make a massive difference. So just one quote there from the sustainability team. Definitely, there are some messages that have come out centrally, and we thought, oh no, that's not at all what we meant. It's come out a bit wrong. So my emerging argument is that there is unintended greenwashing in higher education, and that this is driven by ways of working compounded by a disconnect in sustainability literacy. The process of marketing sustainability in higher education appears thoughtful when sustainability gets to the top of their agenda, though there was little sense of any negative implications for, people didn't talk about negative implications. So this is a kind of a very kind of simple emerging conceptual framework. We've got the sustainability messages that are informed by collaborative orientation, sustainability literacy, and marketing processes. And then it's that disconnect between the messages and the activities that are going on that really, for me, are about unintended greenwashing. So just to conclude, this is my definition of unintended greenwashing. It's sustainability-focused communication which unknowingly misrepresents sustainability practices, often placing emphasis on low impact or small pockets of activity, overly simplifying messages, resulting in inaccuracies in the representation of reality. And this is reduced by thoughtful marketing processes, increasing sustainability literacy, and enhancing the collaboration between these two key teams. And finally, there are things we can do in the sector to make sure that we don't greenwash. I think this idea of an expert in sustainability communication is one for organisations. We need to prioritise training on sustainability literacy within marketing teams. I think there's an opportunity for a code of practice on marketing and communicating sustainability in HE. Certainly literature suggests that producing a sustainability report with assured examples is a good way of reducing greenwashing. And I think there's this important idea of connecting our personal practice with our professional practice with institutional practice, and this sense that we all can be the change to inspire sector-wide change. So thank you very much for listening. I'm kind of interested in moving it forward. If there's anyone who's interested in this area and would be interested in talking to me, I'd be delighted. There's my email. I think that the people I spoke to are interested in doing what they can ultimately to practice sustainability effectively. But there is a sense we really do need to take care of greenwashing. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Thank you. That was brilliant. Thank you. I'm just going to go over here to the chat. And we've got a question from Mariam, who also observes that this is a very timely theme. And her question is, do you think across context there is a shared understanding around how people relate, perceive and define sustainability?
Thanks, Mariam. When you talk about across context, do you mean different institutions or different parts of the institution out of interest?
So I think different people are affected by sustainability problems in different ways.
Yeah.
And if you're directly affected by a problem like that, you will personally connect to it and want to put more effort into it. Whereas if you're only philanthropically connected to it, you might be less keen on doing it or treat it like a tick boxing exercise. So I was wondering if you have thoughts about that.
Well, it's a couple of things to mention. The Advanced HE have just published a literature review on ESD, and that is one of the issues that they raise from the literature, is the fact that different audiences and basically have different views on sustainability about their own experiences. And I am working on a PGR project. I work with doctoral students where we're looking at building a network of PGRs who are interested in sustainability. And one of our kind of founding principles is indeed, as you say, that people will approach sustainability from different ways. And again, sorry, this isn't about this presentation, but our experience there is that international students in particular, international PGRs, are really interested in sustainability. And I think it is because they can see the output, the impact of, in particular, we're talking about, I suppose, green issues and climate change on their experiences. So I agree, people come at sustainability from different views. And even in our institution, we map, for example, our curriculum across SDGs. And there's no doubt, whereas I've got a particular interest in the green aspects of sustainability, for many academics, things like gender, reduced inequalities are the ways to connect academics with sustainability. So my view is ultimately get people involved by the route that kind of motivates them, but get people involved. Thank you. Thank you so much for the question.
Thank you. We've got another one, Fiona, from Mark, who says, excellent presentation, and asks, did your discussions extend at all into the internationalization sphere?
They did a bit, Mark. Thank you so much for your comment. Yeah, one of the people that I interviewed was head of international in the marketing. So we did talk about that. And yeah, I mean, I think we were talking about the challenges of obviously bringing students over to the UK, or obviously anywhere, to recruiting an international base, which I still think is one of the areas that we are responsible for so much carbon output, which was why I was so interested in that presentation we've just heard before mine, you know, to hear about how you were doing that. Air flight, I'm sorry, just looking at the climate change impact on funding, yeah. I mean, I do think personally that flights, whether it be about bringing students or taking staff internationally, is a huge challenge for the sector for us to think about. And one of the things that we, of course, might think about more is transnational education. Perhaps that is an area that, for instance, our institution hasn't been involved in that for probably 15 years, and I think is probably now more interested in, and I'm not saying sustainability drives that decision, but it might be part of it. Yeah, sorry, I don't know whether I answered that very well, but I do think it is very, 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 very relevant, because in a way, without going off too far, is, you know, what is our responsibility? Is it scope 1 or 2 emissions, or is it scope 3? And if it's scope 3, i.e. the travel of our students, the international agenda is massive. But that's why can I just say, that's why I'm on the online conference today, is not that it's a huge amount to go up to Birmingham, but trying to support online conferences to avoid academic, possibly non-essential travel, I think is something we just need to be really, really focusing on.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else have any questions? I've got a question for you. It sort of ties together a theme, I think, that's been running through the presentations, and something that you've picked up on at the end, is that the idea of sometimes the physical space being seen as the ideal learning space. We, as a colleague of mine once referred to it, we fetishize it, which is a really difficult word for me to say. What do you think it will take to see that shift? And also, I think as part of that, you say that this isn't a priority for universities, but what's going to make it a priority?
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's interesting because I personally am someone who thinks the physical space is essential. I really, really do. And I, you know, therefore, just as we heard about the foundation degree, how so central the physical space would be. And of course, there's no doubt for international students, the coming to a place, to be in a place, to live in a place, and all the benefits that are afforded by those students having spent time in, as an example, the UK, and how that informs their thinking about the UK is I think, central. So I'm really pro that. What I'm not pro, though, is long-haul travel becoming normalised through people's experiences of higher education. I feel as though we've just got to be, it's not just, if someone came for thousands of miles for their master's experience, I think that's fine, because ultimately that's a year's experience for one trip that some people might spend to go on holiday for a week. But it's that sense of we've got to be careful not to, as I say, to normalise, to make just absolutely to make long haul travel through people's experiences of higher education something that is not even thought about. So I do feel as though, and I'm coming with the environmental focus here as a priority, that we've got to think through how we promote higher education. So it's, you know, so we do offer experiences that are really valuable in people's home countries as well. But, the physical, so yeah. So I do, you know, it's a wicked problem, as they say.
Yeah, and it links nicely, I think, to Mariam's discussion as well around cultural transfer as well, and think about the ways in which we work together, and thinking about sustainability as part of that. Thank you very much, Fiona. Again,
thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here.
And can we show our appreciation to everyone that presented today? So that's Louise, Mariam, Shannon, and Emanuela, who I think have left. We are on time. Thank you very much to everybody that attended. Thank you to SRHE for making this possible. And thank you once again to the presenters. I've got a list of questions.
And thank you to you, Charlie. You made it very smooth. Thank you very much for your efforts.
You're welcome, and it was lovely to meet everybody. And as we say in Ireland, safe home. All the best. Bye-bye.